I'm ready.
Okay. So, good afternoon and welcome to this new series of events promoted by the Alliance of NGOs on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. It's called Making the Difference. So, we are very grateful to Criminologists Without Borders who accepted to be the first NGO to present their experience about the way they work, the way they operate, and the way they present their results. It's an experience that we are very eager to learn and to discuss with other NGOs to identify issues that may be taken as good practices and discuss problems, challenges, what can be the impediments and opportunities instead to make a difference. So how do we add the value with the work that we do as civil society, as researchers, as academics, where is our field of experience. So without wasting too much time, it's a short event. We would like to stay within 1 hour. The structure of the event includes a presentation from the featured NGO, so Criminologists Without Border today. We have Jay Albanese and Rosemary Berberet who will make the presentation today. And then the floor will be open for discussion, and we hope to have many questions, and we encourage everybody to share questions. You can use the chat. Tobias will be facilitating your participation via the chat and in person. Jay, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. First, let me thank you and Phil and others for pushing to organize this, because I think there was a survey done of the organization of the members. And I think the important thing to realize is that we are all living the same life in different places, in as much as working in civil society, we all focus on particular issues of interest. We have particular methods by which we go about our business, objectives we try to achieve, and obstacles we try to overcome. So the purpose of these short presentations, and hopefully some of you will be interested in doing this in the future, is to give a brief overview to your fellow NGOs to talk about common problems. So Rosemary and I will give you maybe 20 minutes overview of who we are and what we do at Criminologists Without Borders. And then we have a number of open questions, because we'd like this to be discussion, because we want to benefit from your experience and not just tell you about our experience. And Rosemary and I are not in the same location. She is in New York. I am in Virginia, right outside Washington. So unlike a usual presentation where she could give me an elbow or interrupt me, it's much more difficult. So Rosemary, I'm just going to start off, and then I'm going to leave it to you, and we'll jump back and forth, because we are.
All right, you got it.
All right, we are very experienced at interrupting each other. All right, so I have a few slides. 6 or 7 slides, so you don't have to look at me. Here we go. Let's see how this works. All right, can you see that slide? Wonderful. Okay, so this is just a brief summary of what we're going to do over the next few minutes. Just tell you about who we are, what we do, and what we're up to. But number 6 is the important part for me, because you don't get a lot of opportunity to talk to people experienced in doing similar things. Our organization is Criminologists Without Borders, and you've heard the word without borders. The term was coined in 1971 by Doctors Without Borders, based in Geneva and New York. And the whole term was to connote this commitment to provide aid by a neutral organization. And since then, since 1971, there's been a lot, and this is just a partial list of Without Borders organizations. And they all undertake, a series of activities, most of it involving training, technical assistance, information. Some provide direct service, as Doctors Without Borders does, on the ground. Others are more information and so forth. So Rosemary and I got the bright idea to say, well, we belong to a whole series of professional organizations, and they are good, but sometimes professional conferences are experts talking to one another rather than people with knowledge on particular issues, disseminating that information to people who can in fact make a difference on the ground. So we got together with some others and formed Criminologists Without Borders. Rosemary, why don't you talk a little bit about what we're set up to try to accomplish?
Okay. Part of the reason for founding the organization was discussions within the international division of the American Society of Criminology about how we could support the work of the UN, and most importantly, how we could ensure that academic research made it to forums such as the Crime Commission. The American Society of Criminology, along with the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences, both organizations have ECOSOC consultative status and routinely attend the Crime Commission meetings. But large organizations often put restrictions on what can be done and what can be said. They're sensitive about making policy statements. They're worried that policy statements can be interpreted as political statements. And so we wanted to form an organization that had a bit more freedom to intervene, and that was explicitly composed of people who were interested not in pushing forth ideas that come from the United States, but truly ideas that come from around the globe that we thought should have some repercussion in Vienna. So in terms of our mission, we're simply a group of criminologists, researchers, professors, academics, and along with practitioners who seek to apply scientific findings and best practices to the policies and operations of crime prevention and criminal justice systems. So our main objective is to ensure that in the work of the UN, and particularly at the Crime Commission, but not only the Crime Commission, that there is attention paid to the vast amount of academic research that's undertaken by criminologists and criminal justice scholars that is often hidden behind a paywall. So we're particularly conscious and aware that staff, for example, at UNODC do not have an extensive access to the library holdings that academics do, although they would like to incorporate academic research, for example, in the yearly discussion guides at the Crime Commission. We see less and less of this over time, and we see increasing sensitivity on the part of member states for academic research to be included as opposed to government reports because it's seen somehow as not neutral or objective. So our role is really to emphasize that this is research that is part of obviously social science worldwide, and that global research findings need to be taken into account whenever there are meetings of the Crime Commission, expert group meetings, handbooks compiled, any of the work that's undertaken by the UN. So one way we do this is every year we tackle the priority theme of the Crime Commission, whatever it is. And we, in doing so, look at what has been written in the academic journals, mainly globally, on that topic. And we produce a research summary that we distribute in Vienna at the Crime Commission. So you can see here on the slide that Jay has brought up that we've been doing this for 10 years. And we focus solely on the main theme because we know that the main discussion at the Crime Commission is going to revolve around that main theme. So we try and gather from research around the globe what's known, what isn't known, what the research says and what are the gaps or what might need researching in the future, what still remains to be known. And in that way, we think we're making a unique contribution in that whatever the topic is, we do a brief literature review on it, and we distribute that free. Well, we can certainly talk about formatting and distribution and how this could be improved, but this is the main way that we have year after year sort of routinely contributed to discussions at the Crime Commission. Can you go back, Jay?
Sure can.
So the research synopses are part of our research. And then obviously we put on sessions. We put on sessions at side events. We've been doing that routinely at the Crime Commission, also at the Kyoto Crime Congress. And in collaboration with other NGOs, we've also put on sessions at the Commission of the Status of Women for a number of years now, collaborating with the World Society of Victimology, the International Sociological Association, and the American Society of Criminology. The idea of those sessions are, again, to ensure that the research and academic voice makes its way to the side events along with the many other important contributions of civil society. We are a registered nonprofit in the United States, and we also have ECOSOC status since 2014. And we really are the only position we take is that we believe in providing research and scientific-based information to international bodies, particularly the UN.
All right. Yes, and as Rosemary said, we attend the Crime Commission regularly, as that's the principal body that deals with international crime and justice issues. Of course, last year, due to COVID, in-person participation was impossible at the Congress as well as the Crime Commission. So we started making a video, and we're not going to show you the video now. It is 3 minutes of brilliance, but we were able to show it at the meeting, and basically try to summarize the key important one issue, and in the 3-minute time slot that we were in fact guaranteed. The whole point of here is trying to get people, as you all know, you're trying to basically convince people of the importance of your idea and how it ought to be on the agenda. And as Rosemary also said, yes, we've participated in side events at the last 3 crime congresses, the last 10 Crime Commission meetings, the last 2 meetings of the UN Commission on the Status of Women, and a number of professional organizations like the Academy and the American Society of Criminology, and so on. So our game is information. We've been asked many times, well, what are you lobbying for? What are you pushing for? Well, we're pushing for decisions based on evidence and not decisions based on ideology, impressions, or perceptions. And that sometimes occurs, as we all know, in the policymaking and political world that we happen to find ourselves.
If I could just jump in for a minute,
yes,
one
please,
thing we've been doing for the last 2 Commission on the Status of Women meetings is gathering the presentations, some from panels that we organize, some from other panelists that relate to women in crime and producing special issues of journals. So for CSW 63, we held 3 panels in person, and for those of you that don't know, the Commission on the Status of Women attracts many, many, many more representatives from civil society than the Crime Commission. It's a huge community of global feminists. There's always presentations related to criminal justice, whether it's women in law enforcement, violence against women, or women in prison. So there's always plenty of related panels to the kind of work that is of interest to the Alliance in Vienna. And in for CSW 63, we solicited papers from the presentations at our panels and produced a special issue of the open access journal, International Journal for Crime, Justice, and Social Democracy. And I've put the link to it in the chat in case anybody is interested. In 2020, there was no CSW and there was therefore no parallel events organized. But this past year in 2021, the CSW converted, like the other civil society organizations are doing, they converted their side events into an online forum. And it was a huge success. There was more than 27,000 participants and over 700 events. Criminologists Without Borders also collaborated to put on 3 panels there. And we're currently compiling a special issue of violence against women with papers that were presented on those panels. So one thing to remember is that many of the side events include research presentations, and those research presentations sometimes are very appropriate to publish in special issues, and this gives, of course, more visibility to the work of the UN and its various bodies.
Excellent. And one other quick thing is that we have a fairly established webpage, which you could look up at any time, that gives summaries of all of our past 10 reports. Actually, the full text is there, links to the video, and we also have a new commentary page. We're inviting commentaries from people like you who want to write, interested in writing a piece that we would then disseminate via social media on, thinking about ideas and information and analysis, things that often fall by the wayside in the modern world. And this brings us to, this is the last slide. And this is where we're interested in idea exchange. So our approach is on the left, as we've explained. These digestible summaries of empirical research. We take pains to get research from all over the world. But you come up to issues. It's increasingly difficult to get reports to principals, that is in the hands of member states and other representatives, and to get them read. It's hard to write reports that are any more readable than this, because everything is written in a very digestible, bite-sized format. We've gone to the 3-minute videos. It's easier to watch a video than read a report. But then the question is, well, are you having the impact? That's still an open question. And then the second column here is, I think, an issue that we all face. Are we actually creating change, and what could we do differently to enhance our impact? So we're interested to know, what others are doing or thinking about doing to communicate your message more effectively. And of course, you communicate both with your own constituencies as well as with decision makers. And that third bullet, to me, is the ultimate question of civil society, right? How can civil society improve its impact to create change? This is a work in progress. It requires vigilance, but we're all trying to change, attitudes, public tolerance, policy, training, law, all these kinds of things. So, and of course, we're always all civil society organizations are operating on a shoestring. So funding, of course, is always an issue. So what we'd like to do, Rosemary, unless you have some other comments, is open it up for some questions and answers and discussion.
Well, thank you very much. I will just take advantage of my position as a chair to tell you that there are 3 key points that I think we can take home from your presentation. They are very, very relevant to all the the members of the Alliance. And one is, for example, your ability to make a synthesis in the 3 minutes. You stressed the fact that very frequently, actually always, when you can take the floor in UN events, you have to make a synthesis. You have really to be very focused and synthetic to pass the message. Another one is to collect the information that is relevant to the themes that are agreed by diplomats sometimes on the basis of negotiations and compromise. The themes may be unclear, they may not be very focused, and the work that you are doing, supplementing research, may really help them to focus more and to understand also some differences that may exist between certain topics and areas. And finally, the other point that I found very interesting is the bridging the communities. The example that you gave of the CSW, I think was very, very interesting for us, considering that we work in an area that is close to many other environments, many other communities of practice. So thank you very much, and perhaps Tobias can now guide the discussion being on the top of the platform here. Thank you.
So I would recommend people to raise your hands virtually, because then it works after the first come, first serve basis. So you get ranked by WebEx. And Tariq already raised his hands. And just one more point about the video. I recall sitting in the plenary when the video was live streamed, and it was refreshingly different from the other video messages of people sitting in a chair in front of a camera and reading from a piece of paper. So I recall that also the other people in the plenary were happy about some different content from the usual just written and read statements.
Thank you. Yes.
So Tariq would be first, and then Dr. Abdel Karim would be the second on my list.
Thank you, Dr. J. It's a wonderful idea, your organization and your approach, and it's a very fascinating thing. I wonder if you guys have done like stakeholder analysis when you approaching to work with the crime commission to put your objectives and what you will do to have most way to affect them.
Yeah, I'm not certain of the term stakeholder analysis in terms of doing research on our intended audience. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, but to know what they are interested in, and what's their vision and what's their goals, and how they approach things, and how you can ally with some of them, and if there is a conflict of ideas, and to know who's opposing and so on. Because this is from a criminal justice perspective and criminology, it is it could be a unique thing, because I came from public policy analysis, so we do these things all time. So with the organization to know how is the best way to approach them and so on. So as you are a respectable institution, so I believe in research and based policy making based decisions. So this is why I raised this question. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, it's a very good point. From my point of view, and Rosemary might also have thoughts. The target is a moving target, in as much as for example, the member states at UN meetings, their positions change. Their positions on cybercrime which would be the theme one year, might be very different from their positions on migrant smuggling or the status of women or other kinds of issues. So it's so many times your constituency, their views change from issue to issue, and sometimes they change over time. So I know from my previous life when I was at the National Institute of Justice in Washington, when the U.S. would prepare to go to the Crime Commission meeting, there would be briefings ahead of time. They had a whole briefing book on all the issues, and individuals in various agencies would submit, position papers. But in other words, that would change year to year, and sometimes, positions on topics would in fact change. So it's difficult to know those in advance. But I think it's crucial to have relationships with people. One advantage that Rosemary and I have, and many of you have, is that, well, when you're around for a while, people will be willing to stop and chat with you. And, if you email them, they often will email back. So those kinds of access, occurs over time. I think obtaining the confidence of the people you're talking to is the hardest part about any communication. But it is difficult because most of them are going to be strangers. The representatives from member states change all the time. Year to year, they come and go. So relationships are hard to foster, and then positions that member states take change over time. So it is harder than you think. That's why we tend to try to stick with the evidence. Say, well, this is what the evidence says. Regardless of what your position is, this is what the evidence around the world is looking like. So when you're taking your position, you might not want to ignore this evidence. So we always hope that evidence will win the day. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. Rosemary, you have something?
I think sometimes we're a little naive about that. And maybe too set in our academic ways. About 10 years ago, we did try and evaluate our research summary. So we brought it to Vienna, and then we had little sheets, I believe, with a questionnaire and also a SurveyMonkey link, which we sent out, and we set up sort of mailboxes around the plenary and committee of the whole, hoping that member states would give us feedback to the research summaries and evaluate them for us. And I think we got 5 responses. So it was really a dismal failure in trying to figure out what people thought of the research summaries, whether they were useful, whether they read them at all, whether they wanted some different kind of format. We really couldn't get a handle on that. Now, when we started doing this, we were allowed to put them in the mailboxes of member states in Vienna. So we were able to paper everyone. So at least we knew that the summaries were reaching somebody at the mission. As time went on, we were prohibited from doing that. We then started leaving them on the desks of every member state in the plenary, and then we were castigated for doing that. Then we were relegated to standing at a table in the hallway outside the plenary or committee of the whole, and having a bunch of them in our hands and distributing to people as they went by. And that did work, but we got a lot of suspicious looks and a fair amount of member states who would walk by us and refuse to take them. So I think it's not just at the commission on the Crime Commission. There's all around a suspicion, increasing suspicion of civil society and sort of, what are you selling? What are you trying to get us to do? Which is very hard to, I think, work against. There are obviously some NGOs that are very successful in getting their message across because they stand for something. In our case, we don't really stand for something except for the value of research. And so if that research one year happens to be, I suppose, in sync with what one member state might be putting forth in their resolution, then yeah, maybe what we do is supportive. But in general, our research findings, as you know, they're never as clear to advocate for a certain position. They usually have pros and cons of both sides and a lot of unknowns. In other words, there are still a lot of topics about which, particularly in transnational crime, which is still an emerging topic for researchers, that we still don't have enough evidence to say something clearly. So I guess that's my response to that, though I do think that a stakeholder analysis would be interesting. And one method, an additional method I forgot that we did try one year was using the Blue Book. In other words, getting the email addresses of all the missions in Vienna and sending out the research summary in a mass mailing. And that produced absolutely no results.
Thank
No,
you
no
for
responses, no responses at all from that, even though we copied and pasted all the email addresses from the missions.
thank you for sharing the knowledge and experience. Thank you very much.
I'm wondering if anybody else here has ideas on how to get forth their own NGO's message, what they have found to be useful.
Toby, shall I go ahead?
Yeah,
Tariq?
please. Tariq.
Thank you. I think it's a great initiative by Crime Alliance for a brilliant presentation by both Jay and Rosemary. Very informative, and it is a great idea to share this kind of knowledge, information, and your experiences. You are trying to make a difference globally, especially on the UN forum, Crime Commission, and research is your forte, and a very strong point that needs to be lauded. My only, question specifically would be, although you alluded to this, that advocacy is not specially your role, but I would like to know as to your work, which you have shared with different governments, with states, both federal or states and others, what has been the response of the government to this civil society initiative? And have some of these state functionaries or governments, whether in US or other countries, have reached out to you for carrying out further studies or, encouraging what you are doing? So I'd like to know about more responses of various governments and state parties. Jay, Rosemary, both of you, if you could just respond to that. Thank you.
Yeah, that has been something that we wish would happen, but it has not been happening. I do have to say, after the video was shown at the last Crime Commission meeting, I know a couple of members from the U.S. delegation, and one of them emailed and said that was a great video. But in terms of systematic, feedback, we're saying, hey, we're working on an issue, and we'd like to know if there's information about something, or want to know is there research in our region of the world that would help us as we focus on a strategy on whatever the topic is. That has not been happening. Rosemary?
I think we've gotten fairly little reaction. I think our sessions are taken more seriously when we're able to incorporate either UN staff or member state representatives on them. So incorporating people on the events that we produce gets us more impact, but usually those people participate because they're very much in sync with whatever the topic is that we're talking about. So it's not that we've convinced them to be on board, they're already on board and they join us. Anna will remember probably about maybe 15, 20 years ago, member state delegations at the Crime Commission frequently had academics on them. And that really is no longer the case. So it was much easier to argue about the value of research 15 or 20 years ago when member state delegations would have researchers like Jay from NIJ, or the folks from the AIC, or many of the PNIs, in fact, were on member state delegations. That's much less the case now. And I have the sense that that makes it much more difficult to argue for the value of research per se.
Yes, just to quickly follow up. Yes, you're very right. Years ago, you would even see among the delegations from the member states would almost always include experts on the topic to be discussed. So in addition to people from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there would be people who are experts on whatever the topic was that year. I find that to be declining in a big way. And now you tend to have strictly people from ministries of foreign affairs treating the UN forum as simply a foreign affairs, a foreign relations thing. And people are told, make sure you don't spend money and make sure you don't do this. So I do worry about that, because as a result, you have, I worry about the sliding toward treating international involvement as an issue of foreign relations rather than an issue of what can we do to address a specific problem. Yeah, you do worry about the whole idea of people, not being interested in expertise, or at least not involving the people who might know the most about a particular topic.
Yes, and I would say at best, when experts are added to member state delegations, you find that they're law enforcement and security attaches. So high-ranking police officers or people from the ministries of interior that are thought to be technically proficient in whatever the issue is being discussed, but that are not research-based professionals.
No, thank you very much for this candid analysis. I think this gives us a point to ponder and nudge this in direction of these more experts and civil society's participation in these delegations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tariq.
So next on my list are first Phil and then Michael.
Thank you. Great job, Rosemary and Jay. Appreciate your working on this. One quick question is, when you are gathering the research from across the globe, and I know that you make an effort to include non-English articles, for example, and try to cover the globe and who's doing the research, are the folks that you have cited told that their research is being included in the document? I'm only wondering, or asking that, because some of those individuals are possibly linked to some of the member state delegations, and maybe they could help identify or say, be sure you take a look at what the Criminal Law Without Borders is putting out at the commission this week, because our own research is being included. I guess just are the authors identified as being, or notified as having been included?
Not systematically, but I think that's a great suggestion to do in the future. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We have not been doing that on a regular basis. No. But that might be helpful, in as much as, right. They might, if they're, doing work in Malaysia, let's say, and the work is in Malaysia, yeah, they might know people in the government there to give them a heads up. That's a good idea.
And my second question was whether or not, and I think based on what Rosemary had said, this probably wouldn't work, because the implication was that everybody who has cybercrime as a topic with their NGO would already be familiar with the research in the area, hopefully. But I'm wondering if, when you are targeting the member states, might it also be appropriate to target some of the NGOs that have whatever the going topic at the commission that year, or the status of women, target some of those NGOs and let them know what you're doing. If for no other reason, the NGOs themselves might be able to make use of the research that's identified, even if the member states aren't doing much with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, at times it's difficult to know what the focus are of particular NGOs by knowing the title of the NGO. Sometimes it's hard to know what are the precise topics they're focusing on. And of course, within ECOSOC, there's 4,000 or 5,000 NGOs in consultative status, but obviously a much smaller number focusing on crime and justice issues.
Right. Certainly in Vienna, we do that because it's a very small group and we all have our literature at the same table and
Yeah.
we all have the same break room. So we bring stacks of the summary and it is shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's
Maybe
good thought.
Tobias and our various interns over the years could help track down appropriate NGOs linked to whatever the commission topic happens to be in advance. Tobias doesn't do much anyway, so that's give another thing.
Do we know the topic for 2022?
Like, if I'm not wrong, there is sort of like a rough plan for upcoming years, and then sometimes things change. But there should exist a rough plan. I'm gonna ask somebody that should know it. But I'm sure we can manage to get a list at least of 2022, what the topic is gonna be, and maybe even 2023 or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, as you will know, and we want to hear some more questions. The dissemination of information, no matter what it is becoming harder and harder to reach your audience. And the UN is also on the list. For the last meeting of the Crime Commission, the focus was on migrant smuggling, as you recall, and that was a virtual meeting, and so we created a second video. And we include, again, 3 minutes is the limit. So I had short excerpts from videos of 2 experts, one in Mexico, one in Australia, that we interviewed on Zoom and chopped it up and took quite a bit of effort. And then when I first submitted it to the UN Crime Commission folks, they said, no, we can't use this. This is just a video. We want what Tobias was talking about. We're looking for, a talking head. I said, well, if you see, 30 seconds into the video, I do have a couple of talking heads there, and they're from Mexico and Australia. So, there's no other way, to sort of to capture them. So I don't know what will happen. The Crime Commission kind of imploded this past spring due to conflicts among over in Far Eastern, Armenia and Turkey and so forth. So anyway, so the meeting was delayed, and really the important debate on migrant smuggling never took place. So theoretically, that will happen in December. I don't know if that's still on the agenda to happen. So I do plan to resubmit the video in December, but now I'm not even guaranteed that it will be considered to show. So anyway, so you figure, well, how this is sort of a minor issue, but we see it around the world of NGOs, journalists, all kinds of members of civil society, having trouble, basically disseminating their message. Thanks.
Michael.
Yeah. Thank you for this presentation, Jay and Rosemary. It was very interesting. I have a more practical question coming from research myself, particularly doing research for the UN. One has this high expectation to be covering a global subject, and we know how difficult that is to do research, globally, not least because of the many sources and languages. And so I was wondering, practically, how do you do that? Put it together a summary. How many people normally collaborate on this, and how many languages are you able to cover in this? So yeah, that would be my first question. And the other one is a bit different. In disseminating, I was thinking, you do target the member state delegations directly with your research summaries, which is, I think, a great idea. I was wondering did you ever consider also target the UN Secretariat itself, which does a background paper on the topic of the session of the CCBCJ, and in that they also try to do some research, obviously, so they could make use of a concise summary already at that stage, and that would have an impact also on the member state delegations who then read this background paper, hopefully. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay. Rosemary, why don't you
Sure.
about
Michael,
troubles?
it's good to see you. Those are great questions. We usually, when we become aware of the main theme, we try and locate within our academic context somebody who is already an expert. So somebody who has already written about this topic and who is aware globally of where the research is. And we assist that person either with our students who are multilingual or ourselves, and we try and focus on the 6 UN languages mainly in helping the person look for research. Now it's become easier because abstracts can be translated with Google Translate, but essentially we try and cover all regions of the globe and the main UN languages. We end up doing this almost at the same time, I think, as the discussion paper is being produced, such that we finish or have our final drafts among us at about the same time that the discussion paper comes out and is put on the website. So it ends up being a simultaneous product. And we actually have never been aware of who exactly is delegated to write the discussion paper year after year. I think if we knew that, and it's an excellent suggestion, we could collaborate earlier and have our summary feed into the discussion paper. Certainly over time, we've seen much, much less private academic research cited in the footnotes of the discussion papers than used to be. But yes, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I just don't know that we've ever been aware of within the Secretariat who exactly is working on the discussion paper any given year. So if you have any insight into if that's done regularly by one unit or how we would be able to find out, that would be very helpful.
If I may, at this point, because this is a great point, and it is all about the relationship of UNODC with civil society, and was recently the topic of an evaluation. Yeah. So it is a bit of a mystery. For me, what I see is that sometimes UNODC, instead of cooperating with civil society, tries to recruit the expert. So basically, it's a process of co-opting the experts rather than collaborating with the excellencies outside. And this is a very good point that as Alliance we can bring on the table for discussion for future crime commissions. No? So that when there is somebody who is tasked with the drafting of the paper, that there is a process of sharing and discussion with civil society, so that also UNODC can make use of the best experiences available, and for us it's also a way to know that there is something going on there. What do you think?
Just as a point of curiosity, at what point does the Secretariat start to work on the discussion paper? Do you know? So if the Crime Commission's in May or April, what point does that discussion paper get started? Does it get started in January or?
Michael's experience is more recent than mine, but you have to go backwards for translation.
Exactly.
Yeah, Michael.
Exactly. So it depends. No, normally the paper is coordinated by the Secretariat, but there is, of course, the substantive units who provide the input. So if it's on cybercrime, it's obviously that unit taking a lead. but in the research section, we normally have a part to play and to input data and sections of that discussion paper. And yeah, normally, the draft should be finished before Christmas, if I remember well, because it takes time to review, edit, and then after the editing and the acceptance of the paper, of course, at that point, everybody negotiates for an extension, and you get into January. And then, but at some point, quite early, there needs to be the editing phase. And after the editing, you need to calculate 4 to 6 weeks for translation, the 6 UN languages. So
that's very
yeah.
good to know. We don't start on ours usually till March.
Yeah. So by that time, it would be finished. Yeah.
Which I guess goes back to knowing what the theme will be very, very early on.
Right.
In the past, the themes were part of the declarations from the Congresses, right? Is that still the case? Did the Kyoto Declaration include the upcoming themes for the next 5 years of the Crime Commission?
No, it's not like that. I think
it's not that.
Yeah, as Tobias said, that there is a list of, let's say, coming up to watch this space. But I don't know, I participated in a couple of discussions. I was able to listen to the negotiations, and they were really very tense on the wording, and what comes out sometimes is really a team that is not really a team. It's just a very vague reference to something. I think that we definitely need to work more on the exchange of information between civil society and the Commission. We had a very good meeting with the chair of the Commission this year, and perhaps we can go back to the chair and share some of these points that we discussed now, so that for next year briefing, we may have some responses, perhaps.
Right. It'll be interesting to figure it out simply because it seems to be, changing over time. Sometimes it was an external consultant that did a draft. Sometimes more recently, I saw PNI was chosen to do a draft. And I don't know, at other times, perhaps UN staff do a draft. I don't. So yeah, it'd be important to pinpoint how that's happening.
I just saw that Cecilia has her hand raised virtually.
Thank you very much. And first of all, congratulations on the amazing work you're doing. It's really impressive. And for me, it's so sad to see that it's so difficult to get it into the system, and something that is really, really valuable. But a couple of things that I was thinking of, because I've spent more time in New York, but the preparation, and this has been one of the struggles to try to get civil society in for the preparation. What they do, for example, if you're going to have a commission in maybe the month of February, the previous May, they bring together a group of experts. They're called a group of experts, So, and within that you have civil society, but I mean, experts are also civil society, you know what I mean? So that idea of the group of experts to get the conversation started, and then they work on that in the department, in UNDESA, in the case, for the report. So there's something there which might be useful to think about for Vienna if they don't work it that way. It's it's basically how to get the information in there, and the valuable information. Just that idea. But congratulations.
That brings up a really good point, which is that I know that the expert group meetings produce their own report. And Michael, I'm not actually Sure, of what the relationship is between the discussion paper and the expert group meeting report.
Well, it depends. It depends on which working groups, because there is a big change that that you should consider, Rosemary, between the good old times and now, and it is the existence of the two conference of parties of the two conventions, and the proliferation of working groups. So you have now working groups that meet regularly for the implementation of the two conventions, and you have a bit less work on the standards and norms, or more specific work on the, let's say, overall aspects of the Crime Commission, and this work is more related to the global programs, more related to operational issues and projects that UNODC is carrying out. So the work that is specifically related to the team of the Commission, I don't know if it is a regular feature to have a working group to discuss. I doubt that this is done on a regular basis. It would be great, but I'm afraid it's not the regular practice. I don't know if Michael.
So the themes come out really from the work of the working groups that have been created, you say?
I think that the team comes from the diplomats, you know, it comes from the diplomats.
Right.
It's agreed by the diplomats. And then I would be surprised if UNODC had the resources to convene a working group. I would be a bit surprised, unless it is something that is happening already within the framework of a global program or an ongoing project.
Okay. Well, that's very good to know.
If I may continue now, after the pandemic, this could become an opportunity, actually, since we have become used to meet virtually. Maybe this is another proposal that we can make, that there is this working group that could meet virtually. In the past, it was not an option. It was not considered an option to have a virtual meeting. It was always a meeting in person. So that could be a good development.
Yes, that's a very good idea.
Okay. I was really fascinated by this discussion, and I want to congratulate you both, Jay and Rosemary, again. Thank you very, very much for sharing your experience. Do we have any other questions? Anyone who wants to make a comment, a concluding comment? Otherwise, we are doing very well with time. Tobias, do you see anyone?
I don't have anyone.
On behalf of Rosemary and I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope that in the future, one or more of you will be interested in making a presentation like this, so we become more aware of the things that we're all working on from the different parts of the world. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you very much. And the invitation is open then for other NGOs to volunteer for other meetings like this. In the meantime, we have learned a lot, and I am sure that there will be a lot of correspondence and requests going to Criminologists Without Borders. And we also have many ideas for follow-up from the Alliance side. So we are going to pick up on all these suggestions. Thank you all. Tobias, the last word is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will upload it to our YouTube channel, and so you can then send it to all people interested. It will also end up on our website. but maybe it's just easier to share via our YouTube channel. Because it was really a great presentation, and now I now know more about the Criminologists Without Borders than I have before. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
All right. Thanks you all. Bye-bye. Good to see you.